Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I welcome you all for this webinar today, which is about using rendering plugins in HCL DX software. This is hosted by HCL Software Digital Solutions Organization. I'm Vinayak here, facilitator for these webinars. And with me today, Venkata Sadhu, product support specialist for HCL DX portfolio, Chaitanya, Vivek, Ranjit, Rajiv, Raj, and Srikanth. Before we start, I want to inform our participants. Please note this session is being recorded. The presentation file is shared for everyone's reference in the handout section of this webinar. Participants would be on mute throughout the session and they can post their questions on chat. And our panel members would be more than happy to respond to them. Once again, I welcome you all. Over to you, Venkata.
Thank you, Vinayak. The agenda will have introduction and use cases. We will be discussing on what rendering plugin is and how you can leverage a rendering plugin by referring use cases, simple use cases. And we will be discussing on advantages of rendering plugin. And after that, we will look at a few of the out-of-the-box rendering plugins which are ready-made available within the product. And once that is done, we will look at the implementation on how we can implement rendering plugin inside our inside DX plugin, and we can also look at the code. How we can develop different rendering plugins for use, and we will also be going through the demonstration where we will do a hands-on code, and then we will deploy it on our local portal, and then look how we can use leverage on using rendering plugins. Once that is done, we will be moving on to the QA sessions and Q&A. Let's move to the next slide. In introduction, let's discuss on what is a rendering plugin. Rendering plugin is a reusable class that you can create to perform a task at rendering time. What does it mean? In your WCM content, you want to do any activity like at the runtime, at a rendering time, and you want to manipulate the functionality at the rendering time. Then in that situations, we can leverage on using rendering plugins to implement our business logic to manipulate things at rendering time, which can actually refer within the web content by using a rendering plugin tag. Let me describe it more in detail. Like I will take an example. Like say, I want to embed YouTube videos inside my WCM content. So what I can do is I do embed using iframe tag and then source. I can embed a YouTube video inside my WCM content. And if I want to do it in multiple places, what I will do is I will copy the same snippet and just change the IDs and the size, height and width of the video and define it differently in different places. So by this, what happening is on the background, we are actually duplicating the code multiple times. And whenever there is a change in the logic on how we are embedding the YouTube plugin, then every page where we have added, we need to go back and rework on that code base. Every page, each and every page. So that's where rendering plugins plays a vital role, acting as a reusable component, and also it improves your efficiency on putting in best practices in place, and it helps a lot. Like say, we will talk in detail in advantages. So while we are doing rendering plugins, what we need to be looking at is in order to implement, we need to refer our WCM API methods, which can help us in understanding how we can use these rendering plugins inside our portal. So moving on to the next slide, we will talk about advantages. So let's discuss few advantages of rendering plugin. So cleaner code base. Why I'm telling this is a cleaner code base. See, uh, as I said in my previous example, if I want to embed my in YouTube into my WCM content, I have to write an iframe tag which will do that, and then multiple places. I'm doing it repeatedly. By somehow, if I missed one semicolon at one place, would actually have impact on my content, published content. So if we extract that logic out of the implementation on the WCM from the WCM, and I will write it in a plugin, I will have it is the embedding logic is separate, and the variables which is being used for the way to access different videos, I can still remain that into the UI and decide which video need to be played from the UI component. I can read those parameters and then display it. So by removing it outside, I am putting it into one component, one single class, which I can write it clean, neat, and then any changes which I need, can change in this one component and can be reflected each and every page at this component has been used. And higher consistency, because once one code change, we have one embedding logic, and this will actually any failure, it's a single point of failure. When we are coding, we will be conscious on one thing, and then it is where we are implementing it. If we change the way we are implementing, it would reflect on every page, right? So there is a consistency on our code, and we can improve our consistency, and same logic is being repeatedly executed on every page. Improves code reusability. See, one code base we are changing, and it is reflected everywhere. We are reusing our code, which has been developed once, and we can reuse it every day. And we are removing the duplication by removing the logic of implementation from each and every page. And we have a single, only one time we have coded it, and we are using it everywhere. So by this, we are removing completely duplication from outside from the portal, and then we have a single code base, which single logic in place. Next, we are reducing cost and maintenance. Like see, if we let's take it in a different way. Like if on each and every page we have this embedding logic. So if we want to change the complete embedding logic on each and every page, it would take around, like say, if I have 5 pages, each page 10 minutes, 50 minutes. So if we remove that embedding logic out of the from the WCM API pages, libraries, and I have created it as a plugin, and now I have one place to change code. So from 50 we are coming to 10, which actually improve saving my 40 minutes of developer time. And also this time, this by saving his 40 minutes of time, we are actually improving the developer efficiency, so that he can concentrate of new things and doing innovating, putting innovation into his development. These are a few advantages which we are discussing. There are a lot more advantages by using rendering plugins. So move on to this next slide. Next, we will be discussing on use cases where we can leverage rendering plugins, like say, as I said, YouTube videos or any video. If you want to embed into portal, the videos can be published inside a WCM library, and then we can create a logic on how we can embed these videos in our WCM library. We can write the logic in the plugin and then use the plugin tag inside our WCM library to refer the video, and then by depending on the video ID, we can display different videos using the same plugin. Moving on to the next point. We can leverage in publishing PDF or documents. Same way we are doing video, we can do it same way we can do it for PDF and documents as well. So move on to next point. Like say I have inside my WCM library, I want to display depending on the environment, I want to display the content. Like say for for my development, I want to read some integration points are there. So I want to read properties, different properties for different environments. So that sort of implementation can be leveraged by using plugin. How? Like say plugin, it identifies what from the environment variables, we can identify which environment we are running this plugin. And then on the environment variable, at rendering time, we can decide which property value we have to read from the properties file and display that and use that property in order to do any sort of manipulation. It's not just reading the property and displaying it. It can be anything. Like you can write a logic based on the property, and you can the rendering time you can decide and do some manipulations on using those properties. So that's how it can be used, and it can be leveraged. Like rendering plugins can be leveraged and can be implemented for within our WCM libraries. Next point, please. This would be a good example. Like say, if we have an organization with a different departments inside it, and they want to design an album which will display pictures from the repository. They have one single repository, different departments has different folders, and they want to read those department images, department event albums, and display those into WCM pages. Then in that case, they can inside the content they can actually write a plugin which can identify a department based on the user who has logged into the portal, and they can identify that user, and then by reading his profile information, they can display those event albums. If he does not want, if we don't want to expose some albums to every employee, then we can hide those or put those decide on at the rendering time and display those sort of images into the WCM pages. So that's how we can leverage rendering plugin. That's it. We can leverage rendering plugins and then use it extensively, and it helps in improving everywhere we can leverage and see if we can use the rendering plugin. If we do it, we use it properly, then we are reducing a lot of developer and saving a lot of developer time, and also we are improving his efficiency, and he can also concentrate on doing some more experiments, this sort of implementation to improve our portal performance as well. So next point, please. So okay, we can also use rendering plugins if you want to manipulate any of the string values, like in a WCM component, and then display those string values. At rendering time, we can manipulate those and display it inside our WCM content component components, and we can refer those. Next point, please. Okay. We can deliver, like say, rendering plugin, how we can identify where we can use rendering plugin. If we are doing any logic implementation at rendering time, if we are doing it repeatedly, let's think on using rendering plugin so that we can extract the code out of the WCM components and then have it in a single point, single place, in single class. Okay. Next slide, please. So here, so now we are talking about out of the box plugins, rendering plugins, which are available inside portal, which we can leverage on using, and then we can leverage those in using in our WCM content. This might be, you might already be using these plugins and rendering plugins in your day-to-day activities, or can you can use more? Uh, you can use it extensively. Here, for example, tags and rating. Tags and rating are used when you want to tag a WCM content. Then we can use the tag library and enable tagging, and then using those in the WCM components. Rating also, we can use it at the time of when we want to rate some content, allow users to rate. We can use this rating component, and then uh, rating plugin, and then in your component, and then design your WCM components. There are a few more. I'm not going to walk you through detailedly, because this is already been available and we can use it uh, in our portal. And we have a documentation for this. You can go through the documentation, leverage on where and how we can use these plugins. Next slide, please. Let's move on to the implementation of rendering plugin. So in order to implement the rendering plugin, what we have to do is we will be implementing an interface, rendering plugin definition interface, which actually allows us to customize, to extend rendering page rendering functionality using plugins. So using custom plugins. So we need to implement this interface, and we can while implementing rendering plugin, which we will be doing in further slides. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that we are implementing render method, which actually takes in rendering plugin model as an object, which actually this model object will help you in reading the parameters and property values which are there on the WCM component and plugin tag under plugin tag, and we can read those values and dynamically decide on how to how and where which video we need to play. Like example, if I take a video, we can decide on which video to play and the height and width of the display of the video, the size of the video which is to be displayed on the page. And here, this is the rendering method, is the way we are actually implementing our logic, our business logic, at which we are using, at which we are writing to be implemented at the rendering time. So next one would be, we have to write our own plugin, which actually be used for registering our plugin. Once we implement plugin.xml, another thing is, like, we can gain our workspace access inside our rendering plugin by doing a lookup on our WCM content service and from the context, and then get our repository, and then get our workspace, would return our current workspace in which we are, and then also play. We can work on our workspace. We can also use workspaces inside our rendering plugin and do customize it. We can implement the logics depending on the working around the workspaces as well. So here is a sample class which we are going to implement, sample YouTube rendering plugin, which is implementing render plugin definition, and we are implementing few of the methods inside it. So the implementation of get name method would actually defines what is the name of your rendering plugin, what name you want to give. We can specify that name inside this get name method. And I'm skipping this rendering, I will discuss it later. Let's move on. And is show in authoring UI is it will tell the rendering plugin tag whether we need to show this. So inside is show authoring UI will decide whether we need to show this in authoring UI or not. And next method is description, which says what is the description, what is the description of the plugin tag, custom plugin. This will tell you, brief you, like say if you want to brief what is the purpose of this rendering plugin, that description you can specify in this method. And get locally will, if we are using implementing multi MLS in your portal, then you need to write your own MLS get locally method, and then you use that in order to show your title, name, description. It depending on the locally of the user, we can leverage on displaying what it can dynamically decide which language has been chosen, and then display the title or description and the name of the portal or of the rendering tag uh, inside UI. And render is the method which is more important. This is where we are writing our complete logic on how to render content, what should be done inside while we are doing rendering the content, how do we manipulate that the rendering part and all the stuff. So here we are returning true or false. It says like if you are returning true, that means your logic has been successfully executed and you are ready to go with this rendering plugin. If you are returning fail, any failure in your execution, you can always return false so that that rendering plugin throw an error on the page. Move on to the next slide. So here you see this is the full project structure. Here we are developing it as an EAR project. So we have sample YouTube plugin EAR project, and then inside that we will have a plugin web module, which is sample YouTube plugin web module, and in this is where we are doing our implementation. And in this we have source and web INF folders which are in which we are writing our code. In source, we will have our plugin class, and in web-INF, we have two files. One is web.xml and plugin.xml. Plugin is the most important one for sure, but why we need a web.xml is in order to do any web application, because it's mandatory that the WAR file will be recognized if you have web.xml file. Web.xml is the deployment description for a web module. So that's where it is very crucial. That's where we are not doing any code in that, but it's just a dummy file because it is mandated. And we have libraries as well attached to the source, where we need two files, two jar file library, two library files. One is WC web portal based jar file, which will have core functionality, like core libraries, core API libraries inside inside this jar file, which can be which will be useful when you are doing the development of your plugin. And another one which we'll use is the as I said in the initial first slides, in the previous slides, WCM API which we are going to use. That the jar file name would be ilw wcm-api.jar file. This jar file will contain all the WCM API library information, which can be leveraged for extending WCM features and functionalities. So next, move on to the next slide. Here we are actually, it's a simple screenshot on how our class file does look like. So if you see this slide, here we have a demonstration page where we have embedded two different videos using same plugin. So let's move on to do some coding. So here I'm using Eclipse as my IDE. Feel free to use any IDE which you are having hands-on and you are familiar with. And the recommended IDE would be always RAD, because RAD has a lot of features which actually allows you do your development seamlessly and very easy when you are doing an portal DX portal development. So here, as I said, I will go ahead and create an EAR projects. And I'm creating a new module inside EAR. I don't need any client EJB or connector modules. I just need a web module. So I just selected web module and I'm keeping the default name. I don't want to change it. My project folder structure is ready now. So if you look at this, so everything is in place except my class and web content. The next part would be I need to add my libraries. As I said, we are using two libraries inside our for this plugin development, right? So these are two jar files which I'm using, which we need to we can download it from the folder. Our portal implemented portal folder structure. You can find this under your WebSphere portal folder, portal server folder, and appropriate paths. You can find those jar files and you can attach those as your in your build path. So I'm adding these as my build path libraries as external jar files. I don't need to package those into my ER or FAR file because these libraries are already available inside your portal environment. So don't need to attach those in your project. So I've attached those. Now let's go ahead and do. I want to do my web.xml first because it's just a dummy one, right? So I just do copy paste of it. So it's just a dummy one. Web app element is a mandatory one, and display name is also mandatory one. Welcome files. You can add it. Otherwise, if you don't add it, also it doesn't matter. Web.xml doesn't care. The mandate would be your web app tag. That's it in XML. So I'm closing this one. The next one I would prefer to do is my class file. So while creating a class, three parts are important. One is my package, in which I want to create my class. Next would be my class name and interfaces which we want to implement. If you search for that, so once this is done, it will automatically generate which all methods we need to implement. Those are methods we already got as part of our class creation. So in which okay, I'm not going to type my class here. I will just copy it, and we will go through the code. We will go through the code instead of writing the code and wasting our time. We will go through the code. So as I said, the description we can provide the description. Here I am not using any ML, right? So that's where I just hard coded that. You can leverage on using whatever language you want to implement. We can use write those. You use tweak your logic so that it will display depending on the languages. And we are writing this plugin name is been declared as a constant outside the class level value, which I am referring here as both as my title and name. So these are all I wanted to show it in my rendering as well. So that's where I've given it to. So let's move on to the rendering method. So what is happening inside rendering method? Render method. So rendering method, what I'm doing is I'm just writing logic to actually embed an iframe. Inside an iframe, I want to embed my YouTube video based on its ID. So ID, I'm using, I'm reading it from the plugin parameters. As I said, modal object is very useful when you want to read the property values, right, of the from the where the component has been used. So that from there, I'm reading the ID value, video parameter value of video, which is my ID, and then I'm using writer object from the model to write and append iframe, and inside iframe source, I'm actually embedding my ID, and then use this to display my video component. If there are any exception, I am returning false. If there is no exception and my code has been executed seamlessly, then I'm returning success. This is how we write our code here. And the next method which we want to discuss is what is the type of this rendering plugin. The type of rendering plugin is content. So that's where we are using this as a content. We are declaring this rendering plugin type as content. And we are also reading the parameters from the body, from the we can dynamically read those properties values. So this is a simple class which is been, we can ignore everything other methods, but the main method is this one, where we have the logic, actual logic on how we are embedding our video inside our portal. So once this is done, I need to develop my plugin.xml file, which I'm going to create under my web.inf folder with the name plugin.xml file. And the content of the file is, I'll copy that just to make sure that I'm not doing any mistake while typing it. So let's go through this. So what is the extension point? Which type of extension is this? That is where it says like rendering plugin type. Okay, and the idea of it, unique ID which we are specifying for this plugin, and the provider class. What is the class name which we are in which we have implementation of this rendering plugin? That is my actual custom class. So I'm giving the complete class name with the package. So these three are important values. Other than that, these are all default. You can give name, custom name of this plugin, and then we can give custom ID of this plugin, which will be used in WCM content. When you look at when we are adding this, we will see it will be displaying these values in there. So let's go ahead. So this is done. My code completed, everything, just simple thing I've done. So now what I need to do is I need to export this as an ER file. So we'll do export it onto my desktop. So here I'm just deploying that ER file which I just exported. I want give me a second. Actually, I just want to make sure that I don't have this ER file already deployed. Oh, I have this. So I'm removing that in order to remove duplicacy. So what I need to do is when we want to deploy, just we need to click on. It's the same way which we do for every ER file. Just a simple click on install and then select the ER file which you want to deploy and click on next. I don't want to do a detail because it's a simple deployment and I don't want to do it. So don't don't want to do it complicatedly. Just wanted to do it simply. So I've selected that WAR file which we am deploying and the module name, and then just click on. We are just doing next, 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 and selected module names. That's it, and just do finish. So once this is done, my application is done, deployed. Okay, now I'm going into authoring. Uh, I'm not going to create any new libraries or something like that. I will just edit my existing content. I will show you on how we can add that in my page. I assume I already have added those, but I will make sure that it is there. So this is where, see, the plugin colon video, the name which we have specified in our the video name which we have specified, the plugin name. We are referring this plugin by using this name in here. So this has to be unique. We have to make sure that we are giving it a unique name. So I don't have any other custom plugins inside my library, so I just use a video, but you need to make sure that you need to give a name specific to your functionality maybe. And the ID which we are referring, the YouTube ID. So this is the we are calling this, we are taking in this ID in here while at the time of rendering to read what ID, video ID we have to render inside my content. So that ID we are taking in here, and we are also defining the height and width here, and we're using those in our we are iterating to the keys and then putting those values in here. So that's how we are displaying this content here inside of the WCM library. So if you see, if I have something like this, it doesn't look any frame, right? Or your frame, and then I'm using SRC, and then I have to use my HDVS and something like that. So it doesn't look good. So if you look these two, compare these two, by using plugin, we are having more cleaner code, and we do understand by looking at the plugin itself. If you know what is the plugin is for and the name of it, by looking at this name, we can identify this plugin is for this purpose. Oh, we are doing this here, and I don't need to know the how the HTML logic has to be built for using this video, embed this video inside my WCM library. So when the end user comes in, he doesn't need any technicality of it. He just need to know what is the purpose of the plugin and how it can be used. That's finishes my demo. Let's look at the preview of the page and see how it displays on my portal page. See, here two different videos on the same page. I can even play those. So I'm playing this one. If I play this one, this ends my session demo. So let's move on to the next slide, and I hand over my mic back to Vinayak.
Hey, thanks, Venkata. So I would now request Chaitanya to just go over the questions and let's respond to those questions.
Yeah. Hi team. Please do post your questions into the chat system, or panelists would be happy to respond on them. We have a couple of questions. So the question is, can we integrate the rendering plugin with the REST API? Venkata, can you please elaborate on that?
Yes, we can leverage on that. You just need to in the render method, you need to build a logic on reading the you can read the values you can call your REST service and then take output of it and then use it inside your rendering plugin to display. And that need more deep dive, but I that's a good question. Technically, that's a good question, and we can come back to you on that if you want. You need to do a little more deep dive on how do you leverage on using REST templates to call your REST service. So that's where I'm not sure. I need to look back that, but very well if you we can leverage it.
Okay. One more question. Whether
Mhm.
rendering plugin can be integrated with Portal mobile-based UI. Is it possible?
Yes, but what I would recommend is instead of doing that in a rendering plugin, we can we can leverage a plugin to actually render the content instead of rendering based on the device names. We can implement that. I'm sure we can do that, but I would recommend it to be done in themes. That is the best way to do. You do all your CSS stuff in your theme and implement all display of it inside theme, and then build your business logics into rendering plane.
Okay. Thanks, Venkata. I think these were the questions for the day.
Hi, this is Vinayak here again. Thank you all. And if there are no more questions, we can end this session. Thank you all for your time.